Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about INTJ introverted feeling. When I was young, I found myself in tears. Life was confusing, and I was left alone to figure it out for myself. Of course, I had no idea about my cognitive stack, and the fact that my introverted feeling was sometimes taking over and putting me through pain. People seemed to be lining up to stick needles into my odd INTJ way of doing things, and I had not yet learned to protect my introverted feeling function. When I occasionally had extroverted feelings, it was usually for someone who was also being abused by others. The fellow student who didn't fit in, or my mother when Dad was drunk and abusive. But like a snail who pulls back into his shell when you touch him, I found that most of my extroverted sympathy did little to improve things for the intended one, and it sometimes opened the door to having the target individual turn on me. No good deed goes unpunished was a rule of life that seemed valid in my little world. As the years went by, I found strength in protecting those fragile inverted feelings. I didn't turn them into the introverted hate of the outside world, however. Instead, I turned them into a sort of apathy about the outside world. The world did what it did, and I refused to participate or play by its rules in my inner world. Inside, I was safe. Inside was fun. I did things alone most of my free time. I loved baseball, and sometimes in the summers I would get together with some of the neighborhood boys, and we would go to the school nearby and play baseball. What I remember was hitting the ball and making a catch, not the people I was doing it with. At home, my folks got me a pitchback, which was a net that was held tight by springs all the way around it attached to a metal frame. And when I threw a ball at it, it would send the ball back to me so I could catch it. It was playing catch with myself. I loved it. I learned to remove the screws and turn the support legs into various positions which would alter the way the ball would come back to me. I could set it up to practice ground balls, high flies, or line drives. I set up rules for games, and I could play out an entire 9-inning game in my backyard, all by myself. I wore that pitchback out. The springs would stretch, and I would bend them so they could be tight again, but finally even the netting developed holes. I then turned to using a rubber ball against a wall. A baseball could bounce off a brick wall, but it would destroy the cover of the ball. A rubber ball was cheap, and it would stand up to playing a full 9-inning game just fine, bouncing off a hard wall. Generally, I lived in a world where I was on the bottom rung most of the time. My folks were dealing with their own problems, and the schools were built for extroverts, and they had no idea what to do with an INTJ child. When my feelings got into things, they were often hurt. So I got better and better at protecting them and focusing more and more on my introverted intuition and my thinking. As time passed, I embraced my introversion. I liked myself, even when no one else did. I began to set my own standards of self-worth, and more I disregarded other people's standards. In a way, life was moving me into a path like a sheepdog controls the direction a sheep takes. If I tried to move away from my introverted course, something would slap me back into line. In time, things began to solidify, and I knew what I enjoyed doing and what I didn't enjoy doing. My feelings would come out like a jack-in-the-box hitting the release when something traumatic happened. But my first job was to get them back into the box where they belonged. I found that my feelings were my own, and no one else really cared about them like I did. It was a hard lesson. My defense was to encapsulate my feelings and to disconnect them from the actions of others. If someone didn't like me, fine. It became quite easy to disengage myself from people who were unconcerned with my value as a person. They became like inanimate objects in a way, obstacles to be worked around and ignored. I'm glad I didn't develop hatred of people who act like jerks. It is better to give them the attention that they deserve, which is very little indeed. My introverted feeling progression went from being hurt all the time to learning to protect myself from outside triggering of my feelings, to developing a hard protective shell over my feelings to keep them under control. Usually I give them little thought, no more than a rancher thinks about the horses in a corral. As long as they don't get free, they are okay. This keeps my feelings in the background. But when they get into the game, they can be quite intense, especially when they connect up with my inferior extroverted sensing. For example, the act of physical intimacy in marriage is felt at the same wild level as a kid on a roller coaster. It is thrilling and amazing every time. We often laugh at high IQ jokes, but we feel the emotion of humor from down in our tertiary wonderland. Our personality characteristics makes us into a bundle of contradictions. We think and often speak like professors, but we laugh like a child. We stand aloof and appear distant, but we love with such intensity it can be smothering to our partner. We are open to new ideas, but we have no room for sloppy or dishonest thinking. We are often seen as unemotional robots, but we are actually thrilled at the ideas inside our heads. And we also can fall deeply, very deeply in love, to the point of centering our universe upon our mate. We seem inscrutable because only a select few ever really get to know us. We appear to know a lot because we do. This comes from all the time we spend acquiring knowledge for our intuition to process. But while seeming to be brilliant about the universe, we can be truly inept when dealing with people in social gatherings. My wife has often accused me of playing dumb when I make a social faux pas, because she doesn't believe I can truly be that stupid. Another fascinating quirk that we have is that we can be incredible writers, but then stumble all over ourselves verbally when expressing our ideas. One might ask, why did God give INTJs such amazing minds? And in answer, because He wrecked their congeniality. Life is not for wimps. We start off as a single cell that will die if it doesn't attach itself to the uterine wall. We grow, and hopefully we will get all the things we need from our mothers to develop normally. When we finally get outside, there's the cruel world demanding that we be cared for, or else, once again, we will die. While death will stalk us all the way, we bit by bit become more self-sufficient. But then there are people to deal with. People who don't understand you, so you must continue on your quest to become independent. We learn to disconnect from the abuse and to go our own way. However, we are social animals, and so we must open the door to our emotions occasionally. We develop skills, painfully at first, on how to pick our friends carefully. Sometimes we goof. Sometimes we are tricked. Narcissists, for example, are very good at pretending to be what they are not. They can shift their appearance and actions to line up with what an INTJ would want in a friend or mate. A narcissist is like the Trojan horse that seems safe to bring inside your wall of protection, and you can then be run through a very traumatic relationship that will leave your emotions cut and bleeding. Is there any wonder that someone like Ebenezer Scrooge would build up a wall of separation from the world around himself? If you are lucky or skillful enough, you can include just the right amount of social interaction with others. You can find a wonderful soulmate to share life with. In 8 days, my wife and I will be celebrating our 42nd anniversary. There isn't a day that goes by that I fail to remember how truly fortunate I am to have such a life partner in my world. My introverted feelings are very well cared for, and my inner child is very happy indeed. If you enjoyed the video, please click like. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. I'll see you next time.